There is a moment, quiet, unsettling, when the noise of your life finally drops low enough for you to hear what you've been avoiding. It doesn't arrive with drama. It comes like a pause you didn't ask for, a heaviness that settles in your chest without explanation. You wake up and realize that the things that once made you feel alive now barely reach you, and in that stillness a fear forms. Not loud, not obvious, just a thought you don't want to finish. Have I lost my closeness to God? You don't ask this in anger. You ask it in longing. Because you still believe. You just don't feel held the way you once did. The warmth is gone, the certainty is thinner, and you start replaying your life, wondering where the distance began, what you did wrong, what you failed to protect. But here is the truth most people never tell you. Closeness does not always feel like comfort. Sometimes it feels like being undone. What you are experiencing is not drift, it is depth. You are being slowed because speed kept you shallow. You are being stripped because the layers you built were no longer real. God is not stepping back from you. He is stepping beneath you into places emotion can't follow. And that terrifies the part of you that relied on feeling Him to trust Him. Right now, your ego is grieving the loss of certainty. Your soul is learning something harder. Faith without proof, connection without sensation, closeness without reassurance. This is where belief stops being emotional and starts becoming unshakable. This is where you stop reaching for God as an experience and begin walking with Him as a presence. You think you are losing something because it no longer feels familiar. But what's really happening is quieter and far more powerful. You are being invited into a deeper intimacy, one that does not depend on warmth, answers, or clarity, one that survives silence, and when you finally realize this, the fear loosens its grip. Because you understand. What feels like distance is often the moment you are being drawn closer than ever before. There is a silence that doesn't feel peaceful. It feels heavy. It follows you into the early hours of the morning and sits with you long after the world has gone quiet. You pray, but the words fall flat. You listen, but nothing answers back. And slowly, a question forms that you're afraid to say out loud. Why does God feel so far away right now? At first, the silence feels like rejection, like you've been left behind while others seem to hear something you can't. You replay your past, searching for the moment you must have broken something. You wonder if your faith has weakened, if you've failed some unseen test. The absence of feeling becomes evidence in your mind, and doubt starts speaking louder than trust ever did. But sit with the quiet long enough, and something unexpected begins to happen. The noise inside you starts to settle. The frantic need for reassurance softens. You realize how much of your faith once depended on emotion, on warmth, clarity, and signs that made belief easy. And now, without those signals, you are forced inward, not toward answers, but toward awareness. This is where listening changes. You stop straining for a voice and start noticing a presence, not dramatic, not overwhelming. Just steady. You begin to sense guidance not in words, but in restraint, in the way certain paths no longer feel right, in the way your spirit grows uncomfortable with things it once accepted. The silence becomes a filter, stripping away what was surface level and leaving only what is real. What feels like abandonment is actually refinement. You are being trained to trust without constant feedback, to stand without leaning on sensation. This is not the weakening of faith, it is its deepening. And when you finally understand this, the silence no longer frightens you. Because you realize it was never empty. It was shaping you, teaching you to hear with something deeper than your ears. There is a strange discomfort that settles in when the old escapes stop working. You reach for the familiar distractions, the habits, the noise, the small pleasures that once took the edge off, and they don't meet you the way they used to. They pass through you without leaving anything behind. What once felt like relief now feels like time lost. And that emptiness unsettles you, because it leaves you with yourself. At first, you assume something is wrong. You tell yourself you're tired, burned out, maybe ungrateful. You try harder to enjoy what used to distract you. You stay longer than you should. You scroll deeper, laugh louder, consume more. But the satisfaction never arrives. There's a quiet resistance inside you now, a refusal to be soothed by things that only delay the truth. This is where the confusion begins. You wonder why life feels dull when nothing is technically missing, why comfort feels thin, why pleasure no longer protects you from your own thoughts. But what you are experiencing is not loss. It is separation, not from joy, but from numbness. Your soul is withdrawing from what no longer feeds it, even if your mind hasn't caught up yet. Growth rarely announces itself with excitement. It arrives as dissatisfaction, as a restlessness that won't let you settle back into old patterns. You are being called upward, and the weight you feel is the pull of something deeper asking for space. The distractions didn't become wrong overnight. You simply became more aware, more honest, less willing to trade depth for comfort. And then comes the realization that changes everything. You are not broken because the old things no longer work. You are becoming available to something they could never give you. The emptiness is not a void, it is an opening. And once you see that, you stop chasing what once distracted you. Because you understand, with quiet certainty, that you have outgrown the life that could only keep you numb. There is a moment that stops you mid-step. Not dramatic, not loud. Just a quiet hesitation where confidence used to be. You're about to make a choice you've made 100 times before, and suddenly something inside you doesn't move with you. No fear grips your chest, no shame rises up. Just a calm resistance, like an unseen hand resting gently on your shoulder, asking you to wait. There is a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone, but from no longer belonging where you once fit. You sit in rooms full of people and feel untouched. Conversations move around you, but they don't reach you. Laughter sounds distant. And quietly, almost cruelly, you start asking yourself what changed. You wonder if you've become difficult, distant, hard to know. You wonder if something inside you is breaking. People drift away. Not always in conflict, but in relevance. What once connected you no longer holds. The talks feel shallow, the routines feel rehearsed, and you leave, interactions feeling more tired than fulfilled. You don't feel superior, you feel isolated. And that isolation presses on you in the quiet moments, when there's no one left to distract you from the truth rising inside. At first, you resist the solitude. You try to fill it. You reach out. You scroll. You stay busy. Anything to avoid sitting with the emptiness, but the more you avoid it, the heavier it becomes. Until one day you stop running. You sit still, and for the first time, you listen. That's when you realize solitude has a voice. It doesn't shout. It doesn't entertain. It waits. In that waiting, something deeper begins to surface. Questions you've ignored, truths you postponed, parts of yourself you buried under connection. Away from applause, away from validation, away from noise, you finally hear what has been trying to speak to you all along. This loneliness is not punishment. It is preparation. You are being drawn inward because what is forming in you cannot survive constant interruption. God does not always meet you in crowds. Sometimes He waits where no one else can follow, where you are stripped of roles, reactions, and approval. And then the realization settles in. Steady and unshakable. You are not being isolated because you are unworthy of connection. You are being set apart to deepen it. This sacred space you feared is not empty. It is full, and once you understand that, loneliness no longer feels like abandonment. It feels like an invitation to meet God and yourself without distraction. At first, this unsettles you. You were comfortable there. You knew the rules. You knew how to live without thinking too deeply about the cost. And now, without warning, ease no longer feels right. You start to wonder if you're becoming too rigid, too sensitive, too serious. You ask yourself why things that once felt harmless now leave a weight behind. But listen closely. This isn't condemnation. Condemnation shouts. It crushes. It tells. You who you are is wrong. What you're feeling does none of that. It doesn't attack you. It doesn't accuse you. It simply refuses to let you move forward the same way you used to. That pause you feel is respect. It's your inner world finally being aligned with something higher than habit. You're not being pushed away from who you were. You're being pulled toward who you're becoming. Conviction doesn't come to punish. It comes to protect what's growing inside you. It narrows your path not to trap you, but to steady you. To keep you from living beneath your own awareness. This is where comfort loses its authority. You realize that peace is no longer found in doing what's easy, but in doing what's honest, and honesty demands more of you. It asks you to live with intention instead of impulse, with clarity instead of convenience. The realization comes quietly, but it lands with weight. Something within you is being shaped, not broken, not judged, shaped. And once you understand that, you stop resenting the resistance. You begin to trust it. Because you know now, this inner pause is not taking life away from you. It's guiding you toward a life that finally fits the person you're becoming. There is a pain that no longer panics you. It still aches, still tightens your chest in the quiet moments, but it doesn't feel random anymore. You wake up with it beside you, sit with it through the day, and fall asleep knowing it will still be there tomorrow. And somewhere along the way you realize something unsettling. This pain is no longer asking to be escaped. Before, suffering felt like an interruption, a mistake, something to fix, explain, or outrun. You demanded reasons. You needed timelines. You wanted proof that it would all make sense in the end. But now the questions have softened. Not because they were answered, but because they lost their power over you. You don't understand the pain, yet you sense it is doing work you could never do on your own. It's shaping you in ways comfort never could. You notice it in how you listen now, in how quickly you recognize struggle in others, in how judgment no longer comes easily. The sharp edges inside you have worn down, replaced by something quieter, heavier, truer. Compassion has taken root where certainty once lived. Strength has formed without noise or pride. This pain doesn't announce its purpose. It doesn't explain itself. It simply stays, applying pressure where growth is needed most. And instead of breaking you, it deepens you. You're no longer desperate to be untouched by life. You're learning how to be shaped by it without losing yourself. There are moments when the weight still feels unfair, when you wonder why this path was yours to walk. But even in those moments, there is a calm beneath the questioning. A sense that this suffering is not meaningless, that something essential is being built in the dark, beyond your awareness. And then the realization arrives. Not loud, not dramatic, but undeniable. You were never meant to be protected from pain. You were meant to be transformed by it. This hurt is not stealing your life. It is giving it depth. And once you see that, you stop fighting the suffering for answers. You allow it to finish its work. Because you understand now, the pain didn't come to destroy you. It came to make you real. There comes a moment when the struggle exhausts you more than the outcome ever could. You're tired of planning every move, guarding every possibility, bracing for every turn that might go wrong. You've held on so tightly for so long that your hands ache from the effort. And in that weariness, something unexpected happens. You loosen your grip, not out of defeat, but because you have nothing left to prove. At first, letting go feels dangerous. Control has been your shield. It gave you the illusion of safety, the sense that if you stayed alert enough, strong enough, nothing could catch you off guard. But control comes at a cost. It keeps your heart tense. It turns every uncertainty into a threat. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to live in constant resistance against life itself. You don't stop caring when control slips away. You stop forcing. There's a difference. You still hope. You still show up. But the desperation fades. The need to manage every ending loosens its hold. You begin to accept that some outcomes are shaped beyond your reach, and that your role was never to dominate the path, only to walk it with honesty. This is where surrender is misunderstood. It is not passivity. It is not weakness. It is the quiet recognition that strength does not always mean holding on. Sometimes it means trusting what you cannot steer. Faith grows here, not in certainty, but in willingness. Willingness to move forward without guarantees. Willingness to release the constant pressure of what if, and then, almost without warning, peace arrives. Not the kind that depends on everything going right, but the kind that exists even when things are unresolved. Your chest softens. Your thoughts slow. You realize how much energy you wasted trying to outrun uncertainty. The realization lands with quiet force. You were never meant to carry the weight of every outcome. Control was never the source of your strength. Trust was. And now that you've stopped fighting life at every turn, you feel something steadier take its place. Not because the world is suddenly safe, but because you finally are. There is a moment when the words stop flowing the way they used to. You sit in the quiet, ready to pray, and the polished phrases no longer come. The familiar language feels distant, almost dishonest. You open your mouth and realize you don't have the energy to sound strong, faithful, or composed anymore. All you have is what's real, and for the first time, you don't hide it. At first, this feels like failure. You wonder if you've lost discipline, if your faith has thinned, if you've somehow forgotten how to speak to God the right way. Your prayers used to feel structured, confident, controlled. Now they come out slower, heavier, sometimes incomplete, sometimes silent. And that scares you because you were taught that prayer should sound a certain way. But listen closely to what's happening inside you. You're no longer performing. You're no longer trying to prove belief with perfect words or emotional strength. You're showing up as you are, tired, uncertain, honest. The layers fall away, not because you stopped caring, but because you finally trust enough to be seen without them. Your prayers change because you change. You stop asking with expectation and start speaking with truth. You admit what hurts. You admit what confuses you. You stop editing yourself mid-thought. There's no script anymore, only presence. And in that rawness, something shifts. The pressure lifts. The silence feels less threatening. You realize God was never waiting for the right words. He was waiting for you. This honesty costs you something. It strips away the comfort of control. It exposes the parts of you that don't have answers yet. But it also opens a deeper connection, one that doesn't depend on sound or structure. You are no longer talking at God. You are finally with Him, and the realization settles in, steady and undeniable. Prayer was never about sounding faithful. It was about being real enough to stand without a mask. Now when you speak, or when you don't, you know this much is true. You are no longer hiding in your prayers. You are present, and that changes everything. There is a moment when comfort quietly loses its grip on you. Not all at once. Slowly, subtly, you find yourself standing at a familiar crossroads, and for the first time, the easier path doesn't call your name. You already know where it leads, you know how it feels, and something inside you refuses to pretend it's enough anymore. Choosing truth costs you. You feel it immediately. Conversations grow tense. Relationships shift. Some people don't recognize you when you stop agreeing just to keep the peace. You sense the distance forming, and it hurts more than you expected. Comfort would have kept everyone calm. Truth makes things honest, and honesty is disruptive. At first, you question yourself. You wonder if you're becoming rigid, difficult, too serious. Life was simpler when you didn't look so closely, when you accepted things as they were instead of asking what they meant. But once you've seen something clearly, you can't unsee it. And pretending otherwise begins to feel like a quiet betrayal of yourself. This isn't rebellion. You're not trying to prove a point or tear anything down. You're listening to a deeper hunger now, one that doesn't care about convenience or approval. It wants what is solid, what lasts, what holds weight when everything superficial falls away. And that hunger doesn't shout. It steadies you. You start making choices that don't look impressive from the outside. You walk away from habits that once kept you comfortable but small. You speak with more care, even when silence would be safer. You accept uncertainty over false peace, and in doing so, you feel exposed, but also aligned. The cost is real. You lose ease. You lose familiarity. You lose the illusion that everyone will understand you. But something far more valuable takes its place. A quiet integrity. A sense that your life is no longer divided against itself. And then the realization settles in, calm and unmovable. You didn't choose truth because it was hard. You chose it because it was necessary. Because somewhere along the way, you stopped living to feel comfortable and started living to be real. And once that happens, there is no turning back.